TIL stands for Today I Learned. Learn something every day. When Germany surrendered at the end of World War II, huge celebrations broke out on the streets of London. Princess Elizabeth, now Queen Elizabeth II, and her sister secretly left Buckingham Palace to join the crowds outside, with Elizabeth describing it as one of the most memorable nights of my life. J.K. Rowling wrote a real person into the Goblet of Fire. The girl was named Natalie MacDonald, a Harry Potter fan who was dying of leukemia while Rowling was still writing the book. You see her character as a first year who dons a sorting hat and is sorted into Gryffindor. In a traffic stop, Arizona officials seized illegal drugs with a street value of over $1 million, then got a search warrant for the driver's property, which included a former KFC restaurant. In the KFC floor, they found a hole leading to a 590-foot tunnel where drugs were funneled from the Mexican side. France has 58 nuclear reactors, generating 71.6% of the country's total electricity, a larger percent than any other nation. France turned to nuclear in response to the 1973 oil crisis. The situation was summarized in a slogan: "In France, we do not have oil, but we have ideas." In 1998, a burglar stole a priceless diamond ornament originally belonging to Empress Elizabeth of Austria, replacing it with a gift shop replica. Newspapers covered up the theft by claiming it had been speedily recovered, and the fake remained on display for 10 years. Julius Caesar was arguing with Cato in the Senate. A messenger delivered a note to Caesar. Cato told Caesar to read it aloud. Caesar handed the note to Cato to read. The note was actually a love letter from Cato's sister, who was madly in love with Caesar. Cato said, "Keep it, you drunk." Mary, Queen of Scots, suspected of murdering her husband, fled to England for help. Cousin Queen Elizabeth I, threatened by Mary's claim to her throne, imprisoned her 19 years, then beheaded her. Elizabeth had no children, so Mary's son ironically became first king over England, Scotland, and Ireland. 6 Georgia inmates out on work detail saved a deputy sheriff who collapsed unconscious. They could have taken his gun and fled with the work van, but used the deputy's phone to call 911. The sheriff's office gave the men a pizza party with homemade dessert and recommended reduced sentences. Termites are being researched as a possible renewable energy source, as they can produce up to 2 liters of hydrogen from ingesting a single sheet of paper, making them one of the planet's most efficient bioreactors. In Ireland, there is a popular tradition known as the 12 pubs of Christmas. You must go to 12 different pubs in one night, having one drink, most commonly a pint of beer, in each pub. Participants usually have 12 rules to follow. For example, no sitting in pub 3, no using the bathroom in pub 7, etc. British politician Tony Benn met his wife in Oxford in 1949. 9 days later, he proposed to her on a park bench. Later, he bought a bench from Oxford City Council and installed it in the garden of their home. They were together for 51 years. Pineapples in the 1700s were worth over $8,000 in present-day currency. People would literally rent them to flex at parties. A 9-year-old Pakistani girl, Arfa Karim, was the youngest Microsoft certified professional, MCP, until 2008. When she suffered cardiac arrest in 2011, Bill Gates assembled an international panel of doctors to advise the local physicians treating her and offered to pay for treatment in the US. In South Korea, February 14th is Valentine's Day, where women give men presents. March 14th is White Day, where men give women presents. April 14th is Black Day, where single people gather together, dress in black, and eat a bunch of food. Today I learned that there is a religious group in Japan who believes that Jesus didn't die on the cross. Instead, it was his kid brother Isukari. Jesus instead went to Japan and lived there until he was 106 years old. His grave is found in Shingo, and thousands of pilgrims and pagans go there every year. That last year, researchers from the University of British Columbia figured out how to convert blood type A into the universal type O, which all patients can receive in a transfusion, regardless of their own blood type. This could broaden the supply of blood and ease shortages. Ania Poerian, a Canadian who at age 17 invented a portable dialysis machine costing $500 to build. Dialysis machines typically cost about $30,000. Her machine filters 4 liters of blood in 25 minutes. The teen who sold a kidney for an iPhone is now attached to a dialysis machine. He suffered organ failure and is likely to be bedridden for life after suffering renal deficiency. He could get a transplant for 336,000 Australian dollars on the black market, more than 80 times what he received for his kidney. Part of the reason we sigh is because the alveoli in the lungs collapse with disuse, and a sigh pops them back open by taking in more air. Humans average about 12 sighs an hour, and without them our lungs would fail. Several years after Harriet Tubman escaped to freedom, she returned to rescue her enslaved husband. When she found out he'd remarried another woman and didn't want to leave, she thought about making a scene, decided it wasn't worth it, and then led several other slaves to freedom instead. The flag patches on a soldier's uniform are reversed to mimic a real flag that, if being carried into battle, would flow backwards in the wind when marching forward into battle. If it were displayed normally, it would look like the soldier was retreating. The Mayfair helped establish the gay bar scene in New York. Fat Tony purchased the stone wall in 1966 and transformed it into a bar and restaurant. He later bribed the New York Police Department around $1,200 a week to ignore indecent conduct occurring behind closed doors. The oldest surviving book in the world is made of gold and was found by someone digging a trench for a canal only 70 years ago in Bulgaria. A mastermind cybercriminal who was on the FBI's most wanted list was arrested when detectives were able to figure out his laptop password. It was the name of his cat, followed by 123. Joy Milne, a super smeller who found she could smell a unique odor on people with Parkinson's disease years before the onset of symptoms. Scientists then isolated biomarkers in sebum, oily substance from face/back, of Parkinson's patients, paving the way to earlier detection/treatment. In 1916 there was a proposed amendment to the US Constitution that would put all acts of war to a national vote, and anyone voting yes would have to register as a volunteer for service in the United States Army. Males and females finish urination differently. Specifically, males contract a muscle called the bulbus spongiosum several times to empty the urethra, whereas the female urethra is emptied by gravity, and females do not use this muscle to squeeze out the urine like males do. Saudi Arabia only abolished slavery in 1962 under pressure from the USA and Great Britain. Sausages have been commonly referred to as dogs since the 1800s due to a belief that sausage makers used dog meat in their sausages. Consumption of dog meat was common in Germany up to the early 1900s, so the suspicion was occasionally justified. As Beethoven's deafness began to affect his ability to compose properly, he sawed the legs off of his piano and used the floor as a sounding board. He would lie on his wooden floor and hit different piano notes at various volumes to feel their vibrations to see if they fit into his composition. The left brain/right brain theory that each side of the brain controls certain functions and people's abilities are based on their stronger side is actually a myth. Studies have shown that both sides of the brain collaborate to perform tasks and that they perform equal activity on average. Despite Genghis Khan's reputation as a genocidal ruler, he was very tolerant of the religions of his subjects, consulting with various religious leaders. He also exempted Daoists, Buddhists, Christians, and Muslims from tax duties. In 2011, near Syracuse, NY, a man riding bareheaded in an anti-helmet law alley lost control of his cycle, went over his handlebars, hit his head on the pavement and died. A state trooper said the motorcyclist likely would have survived the accident if he'd been wearing a helmet. 15-year-old Temma Boggs and a friend saved a 5-year-old girl from a kidnapper. The teens saw the girl in the kidnapper's car and chased the car on their bicycles. After a 15-minute chase, the driver apparently knew he was being followed, stopped and let the girl out. The Australian government owns all koalas like how China owns all pandas. Disappointment Island is an uninhabited island in New Zealand. In 1868, a steel tanker crashed on the island which killed 68 people, leaving the 15 survivors waiting 18 months to be rescued. In 1907, another ship ended up crashing there, and 12 men drowned. Despite being a popular trope in crime fiction, it's basically impossible to quickly incapacitate someone with a chloroform-soaked rag. It generally takes about 5 minutes of inhaling the substance to render someone unconscious. Today I learned that simply washing your lenses with soapy water prevents them from fogging when you wear a face mask, and that this is a common technique used by surgeons and others in the operating theater.